All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a pretty comprehensive report today, one that exposes what it calls the anatomy of a scam. We're looking at some truly shocking allegations detailing how an organized syndicate supposedly infiltrated literally one of the most secure cash rooms in the entire country, the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. Our main focus today, we're going to strictly examine the alleged infrastructure of fraud that's laid out in our source material. And this really gets to the heart of the emotional stakes involved here. As the report highlights, quote, "They came into the Ram Temple and stole the donations meant for Lord Ram." I mean, just think about the millions of ordinary devotees who stood in line for hours, right? Donating their hard-earned money out of deep, deep faith, only to allegedly face this massive betrayal.
The source presents a really stark contrast here. On one side, we've got the donors, poor farmers giving a portion of their harvest, everyday laborers, and mothers literally cutting household expenses just to save a few pennies. But then on the other side, you have the profile of the accused low-level staff. We're talking about people who went from earning very modest salaries to becoming sudden millionaires, driving Fortuners, and owning massive real estate. So, how exactly did this happen? Let's break it down.
Part 1. Designing the legal loopholes.
So the source argues that to pull off a scam of this absolute magnitude, the groundwork actually has to be laid from the very beginning, using some pretty calculated legal maneuvering. The government created the Sri Ram Jamabhoomi Tirth Kshetra as an autonomous trust. Now, while it was filled with government nominees and politically connected figures, that autonomous status essentially meant it operated like a private entity. And the report notes this was an absolutely critical move. Why? Because it exempted the trust from right to information or RTI laws and standard government audits. Even former RSS members who filed RTIs to get details on tax exemptions completely blocked. Public money was flowing in, sure, but public accountability was structurally locked out.
And this lack of oversight allegedly led to some serious systemic blindness. According to the source, early red flags were just completely ignored. Back in November 2020, a private audit explicitly warned of highly unprofessional management and a severe lack of systematic records, basically predicting inappropriate transactions if things weren't fixed. Those warnings? Allegedly buried. It gets worse. An engineer named Dinanath Verma actually reported being asked for a 40% commission by a trust member for aluminum work. Instead of launching an investigation, the source reports he was fired, had his payment stopped, and even faced death threats.
Part 2. The nepotism hiring pipeline.
Okay, so with oversight neutralized, the next step in building this alleged infrastructure of fraud was gaining physical access to the highly secure counting room. The source details how the State Bank of India, the SBI, and private security services were allegedly pressured to hire locals and relatives of trust members without proper interviews or background checks. For example, Manish Yadav, the nephew of a prominent trust leader's driver, gets put on cash counting. Anukalp Mishra, a brother-in-law of another staffer, is put in charge of creating cash vouchers. Tinu Yadav, a personal driver, is literally handed access to the strong room keys. The report alleges this wasn't a professional team at all. It was a closely knit network of insiders.
And obviously, to protect a network like that, you need to control what is seen. 1,600. That is the number of CCTV cameras in the temple compound. According to the report, the control of all these cameras was placed under just one trusted insider, a radio maintenance officer named Arjun Dev. And the source highlights a massive red flag here. He allegedly evaded routine job transfers for an incredible 17 years. That kept him exactly where this syndicate needed him.
Part 3. Mechanics of the cash theft.
Now that we've seen the setup, how exactly did a 500 rupee note travel from a devotee's hands into the pockets of the operators? Well, the initial method was shockingly crude. Despite there being 50 people in the counting room, these operators allegedly used their coordination to literally block the camera views. They just slip 500 rupee notes into their pockets, asked to use the washroom, and stash the cash right there in the toilets. Then, after their shifts, they'd simply collect the money and distribute it amongst themselves.
But, as extra guards were added, they had to get smarter. So they developed this devious architecture to their scam that they called the 120 note trick. Here's how it worked. Step 1, during counting, instead of making standard bundles of 100 notes, they'd quietly slip 120 notes into a bundle. Step 2, the insider handling the vouchers writes down the official value as just 100 notes. Step 3, en route to the bank, the couriers remove those extra 20 notes. And finally, step 4, the excess is split entirely offline. The bank gets exactly what the voucher says, and the system is completely bypassed. Pretty wild, right?
And how did they hide this? 180 days. That was the legally mandated time CCTV footage was supposed to be securely stored. But the report alleges this rule was blatantly ignored. Footage was supposedly being deleted after just 45 days, sometimes even less, which effectively destroyed the digital evidence of their activities.
Part 4. The real estate land scams. So the cash theft was really just one pillar of the alleged fraud. The source reports the political leaders exposed a second, massive pillar involving real estate flips. And I want you to consider the sheer absurdity of this timeline. A parcel of land is bought by individuals for 2 crores. Then just 10 minutes later, and I mean 10 minutes, not days, not months, that exact same piece of land is allegedly sold to the trust for 18.5 crores. That is a 16.5 crore profit generated out of thin air using public donation money.
And this wasn't just an isolated incident either. The report lists multiple highly questionable deals. In one case, a person buys land for 20 lakhs and flips it to the trust for 2.5 crores just 2.5 months later. The trust allegedly even bought land from individuals declared as absconding criminals by the courts. Another piece of land saw a massive markup, facilitated by a local politician. The source really emphasizes the alleged complicity of top trust members who would have had to approve these wildly inflated purchases.
Part 5. Missing jewelry and cover-ups. If cash and land weren't enough, the source brings up some really alarming reports regarding undocumented gold and silver donations. A former accounts in charge alleged that he actually saw undocumented chests of silver being moved without any receipts. The report details that 200 kilograms of silver bricks donated by the Sindhi community just vanished without official receipts being issued. A businessman even claimed his donation of a 3-kilogram gold necklace and 1-kilogram gold slippers is missing from the records. Guys, it got so bad that investigations were reportedly launched over fears that real jewelry placed on the deity might actually be replaced by counterfeits.
But every scam has a breaking point. By May 2026, SBI officials started noticing the discrepancies. They couldn't exactly fire the nepotism hires, so they took a different route. They secretly installed hidden cameras right in the counting room, completely bypassing that compromised CCTV operator we talked about. A few days later, they reviewed the footage. And there it was, the syndicate caught red-handed, literally stuffing cash directly into their clothes.
Part 6. Sudden Wealth and Systemic Solutions.
Those hidden cameras sparked immediate raids by a Special Investigation Team, or SIT. Now imagine the shock of finding workers with official salaries of just 12 to 22,000 rupees suddenly holding vast empires. Tinu Yadav, a former auto driver, was found with 50 crore worth of property papers, a 70-room hostel, and a fortune. Lavkish Mishra, a former mechanic, had cash hidden in cow dung and was building a 2-story house. Avinash Shukla was raided and allegedly found with over $2 million in foreign currency. I mean, these humble beginnings transformed into multi-million-dollar portfolios practically overnight. However, the source points out a massive, glaring issue with a subsequent investigation. It is a textbook conflict of interest. The SIT conducted its raids and submitted its preliminary report. But who did they submit it to? Additional Chief Secretary Sanjay Prasad. The problem with that, well, he is himself a member of the very trust being investigated. Unsurprisingly, the report notes that FIRs only targeted 8 low-level staff members, which seemingly shielded the higher-ups. So to prevent this alleged infrastructure of fraud from operating in the future, the source outlines several systemic solutions. First, strip the autonomous status and bring the trust under RTI jurisdiction so the public can actually demand transparency. Second, mandate the publication of independent annual audits. Third, create a real-time digital dashboard for donations. And finally, strictly separate the authorities who hire the staff from the staff physically handling the cash. And this brings us to our final thought. The source leaves us with a pretty chilling question to ponder. If drivers, mechanics, and low-level counting staff were able to orchestrate such a sophisticated bypass of the banking system and accumulate tens of crores, who are the real masterminds running this infrastructure? It's a question that absolutely demands an answer. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and